Hello, I'm Ellen Bintz, coming today from Wheaton, Illinois in the U.S. Welcome to Impact, a podcast about how we can each bring about real change in the world and getting practical in making that happen.
And hello, I'm Clive Johnson, coming today from Chelmsford in the UK, not far from London. A special welcome if you're listening for the first time, and a big thank you to our new subscribers. Each week, we look at one aspect of how we can connect our hearts to offer healing for others with our collective intention, prayers, and meditation, and go behind the headlines of a critical happening in our world that needs our attention right now.
In today's episode, we take one of these regular deep dives to more fully understand and tune in with something many of us may know only a little about and see where we might hone in with our prayers and intentions. And as we record, it's July 3rd, 2024.
And today we look at the challenges of microplastic pollution. Plastic inhalation into our bodies is an emerging area of concern due to the potentially adverse health effects. That's for ourselves, not to mention the planet.
Ooh.
There is still much to be understood regarding the effect of microplastics on human health, although mounting evidence suggests this may be substantial and increasing as the world's appetite for plastic consumption continues to rise. According to Hannah Lukasik, a microplastics researcher at the leading environmental research group, Desert Research Institute, based in Reno, Nevada, the flow of microplastics creates a domino effect. She says, microplastics can enter the environment in many ways, from litter to fibers emitted when you wash and dry synthetic clothing. Then particles may run off into aquatic environments or enter the wastewater system, where they can be collected into sludges and be applied to the soil for agricultural purposes. The result is that they end up in the fish and other plant and animal foods we eat, the water we drink, and even the air we breathe. A recent World Health Organization report revealed that microplastics are found in sources ranging from drinking water to sea salt, honey, and beer, and many other products in between.
Mm-hmm.
Another study published in the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health also found microplastics present in fruits and vegetables. However, after we consume them via our food or drink, microplastics don't all simply pass through our body. In fact, in one, albeit small-scale study, they were found in the blood of 17 out of 22 healthy people.
That cannot be good.
No.
That cannot be a good number.
No, that's not a good number. And it means that probably if the law of averages apply, either you or I, Ellen,
Yes.
or both of us are in that number.
Exactly.
Without knowing,
right.
perhaps.
You're right. And many of our listeners from around the world, this is global for
Yep.
sure.
For sure.
So what actually are microplastics? Microplastics and even smaller nanoplastics are small plastic pieces measuring less than 5 millimeters in length. And we're treating nanoplastics and microplastics together in our intentions. They're non-biodegradable by nature, which means that they can survive in the environment for very long periods. Since the 1950s, the manufacturing of plastics has increased exponentially. As of 2015, approximately 6.3 billion metric tons of plastic waste had been generated, with a significant portion, roughly 79%, either deposited in landfills or dispersed within the environment. Moreover, if current trends continue, it's estimated that by 2050, nearly 12 billion metric tons of plastic waste will have accumulated, nearly double.
Mm.
What's more, plastic production releases billions of tons of greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. We're not even touching on that.
No.
For example, Australia produces around 3 million tons of plastic materials yearly, but recycles only 12% of this, with the remaining portion being thrown away after a single use. One example of a major source of microplastics is abandoned vehicle tires. Some 2 billion tires globally are sold each year, enough to reach the moon if stacked on their sides, with output expected to reach 3.4 billion a year by 2030. Tires are made from about 20% natural rubber and 24% synthetic rubber. Both of these break down in the environment, but synthetic fragments last a lot longer. An incredible 78% of ocean microplastics are synthetic tire rubber, according to a report by the Pew Charitable Trust. These tiny particles are ingested by marine animals with varying effects, including retarded growth and behavioral abnormalities. Even before they are abandoned, a car's 4 tires collectively emit 1 trillion ultrafine particles, that is, particles less than 100 nanometers, per kilometer driven. Worryingly, tire emissions from electric vehicles are 20% higher than those from fossil fuel vehicles, since electric vehicles weigh more and have greater torque to other vehicles, which wears out tires faster. I did not know that.
No.
Possible area for intention could be that we understand more research progress to improve the longevity of tires.
Yeah.
And reduce their potential to release microplastic particles into the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Just to contemplate and
Oh my God.
this just this one product, essentially tires, having such a huge impact. I guess there is such concentration of microplastics within them. I know whenever I have a faulty tire, you always have to have at least a pair replaced to get the balance right, apparently, and that's the recommendation. So one good tire, still roadworthy tire, is being wasted every time, another one is faulty. Yes, there has to be more research in this area, surely, and rather than just continue with the throwaway culture that we have. And as we said, moving towards electric vehicles, which, is the big hope for going green, isn't it, on the road?
Yeah. And everything needs to be considered. How about we all ride bicycles, but they have rubber tires too, so I don't know.
They've changed since I was young, though. I remember fixing punctures was always something I never used to enjoy, particularly I used to ride a bike to school. And whenever I got a puncture, this was usually a late winter's evening. You used to get a washing bowl filled with water and somehow have to find where the...
Yes, absolutely.
some glue or something you had to fix. That wasn't a fun task, I have to say. I think that's improved.
I think so. So I didn't realize the expected growth tire sales from 2 billion to 3.4 billion by 2030, which is not that far away.
No. And I guess this naturally enough relates to the projected increase in the number of vehicles that will be being driven.
So yes, listeners, let's together keep this awareness of the output of tires and, of course, everything else we've said.
Absolutely. Yeah. So is inhalation the only way microplastics enter the body? Inhalation is thought to be the main route for microplastic exposure in humans, not to mention other animals, of course. A 2023 study led by the University of Technology in Sydney found that humans might inhale approximately 16.2 bits of microplastics each hour. That's the equivalent of a credit card every week. Every microplastics, such as fibers from synthetic textiles and particles from various sources, are then deposited in the respiratory system. Particles larger than 10 micrometers typically get trapped in the upper airways, while those smaller than 10 micrometers can reach the bronchioles. Smaller particles can penetrate much deeper and even enter the bloodstream. Many people also ingest microplastics through contaminated seafood. Additionally, microplastics have been found in tap water, bottled water, and in other liquids. One recent study estimated that the average adult consumes approximately 2,000 microplastics per year through salt alone. Apart from what we inhale, eat, and drink, different chemicals can leach from our plastic water bottles, knives, and dermatological products to enter our bodies. Mere contact with plastic can allow these microscopic particles to enter into our bodies. So possible areas for our intentions here would again be really around increasing public awareness about contact with plastic and how microplastics might enter the body. It's something that I knew next to nothing about before we decided to look at this particular topic today. Not to cause alarm, of course, but just to increase mindfulness of perhaps some of the small steps we can take, such as reducing our own plastic consumption.
Which really isn't that difficult if you give it a little energy. There are ways to reduce your consumption and be more efficient, that's for sure. And what are the health impacts of microplastics? Because, before I read this, I wondered, are they always harmful to us or are they innocuous? I don't know. The full health impacts of microplastics' presence in the human body remain largely unknown, although several recent studies have highlighted this as an area of concern and indicate probable impacts in a number of areas. These include, of course, the respiratory symptoms such as coughing, wheezing, asthma, airway inflammation, cellular damage, and immune responses, which can also transmit negative effects to other parts of the body, potentially contributing to systemic health issues such as cardiovascular disease and cancer. Seems logical. Studies have shown that plastic particles can induce pro-inflammatory responses and potentially lead to chronic respiratory conditions. Research has also confirmed the presence of microplastics in human lung tissue. For instance, one study found microplastics in all regions of the human lung airways, with a significant portion being polypropylene, polyethylene terephthalate. Hope I said that right.
I can't help then.
Albeit while some studies are providing evidence of microplastics causing inflammation and other adverse effects for human health, more research is needed to fully understand the long-term health implications and to establish clear exposure and risk data. So a possible intention to hold here would be wisdom for researchers to know where to direct their studies, to be able to qualify the effects of microplastic pollution on our health, and where should the priorities be?
Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it, that the research seems to be well behind here. This almost seems to be a newly discovered problem. We understand very little about, and particularly as you were saying there, the longer term effects as well.
Well, I don't think it's such a stretch or a possibility to think this increase in cancer, this increase in arthritis and inflammation and these diseases, could this be part of the issue? That we're missing this piece?
Absolutely. It's just an unknown at the moment, isn't it? But, yes. So,
it's in our bodies. So,
yes.
Yeah.
So apart from what's going on inside our own bodies, apart from human health, what are some other effects of microplastic pollution? Microplastics contaminate both terrestrial and marine environments across the globe. They pose a threat to a wide range of animals, with ingestion potentially causing internal injury and death. By affecting individual organisms, microplastics can ultimately disrupt entire ecosystems. And again, this is an area where there will be very little known at the moment, I believe. For example, if smaller creatures at the base of the food chain, such as zooplankton, are harmed, which we can well imagine may well be the case given their size and delicacy, this can affect larger animals that rely on them for food, resulting in cascading effects throughout the ecosystem. Microplastic pollution is a truly global problem. They've been detected from the south in the Antarctic, north up to the Arctic, and even up to the peak of Mount Everest, and down to the depths of the Mariana Trench in the Pacific. Plastic is the largest part of marine garbage. In 2017, at least 8 million tons of plastics entered the oceans. Microplastics...
Just in 2017?
Just in 1 year.
8 million tons.
Yep. They're also increasingly being found in soils, which affects the health of the soil by disrupting the soil microbe community and in turn potentially reducing soil fertility, which of course in turn would affect plant growth. And as we've said, plastics are made from fossil fuels, so their production contributes to the greenhouse gas emissions and ultimately to climate change. There's also some research suggesting that the presence of microplastics in the ocean may interfere with the carbon cycle by disrupting processes by which carbon is sequestered in the deep ocean, potentially also contributing to global warming. I think we covered that story, a small story way back when, actually. New research.
Yeah.
So, possible area we might hold intention for here would be for widespread and urgent promotion of the scale and impacts of plastic pollution in a way that prompts governments, organizations, and individuals into taking action.
So how should we respond? Fundamentally, microplastics are created by humans. Those intentionally produced at micro scale for a specific use, such as agrochemicals or pharmaceuticals, and those that are the byproducts of larger plastics, especially those disposed of in the environment. Mitigating the impact of microplastic pollution involves reducing our overall plastic use and demand, improving waste management systems, and considering legislation to limit the production and use of certain types of microplastics. Better public education to raise awareness of the problem and promote responsible behavior may also play an important role. Absolutely. The Center for International Environmental Law recommends adopting legally binding measures without any further delay, especially to ban intentionally added microplastics and introducing mandatory regulations to reduce the plastic production. Self-regulation, it says, has failed to reduce plastic pollution. This year, the United Nations has committed to deliver a legally binding agreement to transform the way we produce and dispose of plastics. 3 rounds of negotiations have laid the groundwork, with final negotiations scheduled to be held in South Korea in November. The United Nations Treaty on Plastic Pollution will aim to address the global crisis of plastic pollution and establish a comprehensive framework to tackle its impacts on the environment and human health. It's designed to help strengthen waste management systems, bolster financial aid, technology transfer, and capacity building initiatives, particularly in developing countries. Further, it aims to enhance plastic pollution management capabilities and foster international cooperation and collaboration among nations to share best practices, scientific knowledge, and technologies to effectively combat plastic pollution. Some national and local governments are already taking up the fight. For example, 35 have banned single-use bags and cutlery, while last year, New York State sued PepsiCo, accusing the company of polluting an environment and endangering public health through its single-use plastic bottles and wrappers. Still, large-scale multinational cooperation is needed. I wonder why PepsiCo got because it seems like a lot that they could have gone after her. So, got to start somewhere, but yeah.
Absolutely. Where was I yesterday? I was unexpectedly, I visited my mother yesterday, and while I was en route, I was asking her, do you want shopping brought in? And she needed some shopping. And usually I have a spare bag that will last a lot of time in my car, but I didn't for whatever reason on this case. So I ended up buying a new plastic bag.
Reusable plastic bag?
It's reusable. Oh yeah, it was reusable. And I was quite surprised how much it had gone up in price, actually, since I last remember buying one, which seemed to be a step in the right direction. There's a bit of a disincentive there. You know, if you're having to pay this wasn't quite £1, but it wasn't far off it, for a reusable bag, when you can, for a new bag, especially if you need several on your weekly shot. I think that's got to be, and has seemingly been quite effective in reducing one form of plastics. But I guess it's just the convenience, isn't it, for companies like PepsiCo and for all sorts of producers of consumer products to offer.
The alternative, we used to get all of that in glass, the glass bottles. And remember, I don't know if in the UK, but we would bring back them back for deposit.
Yes.
And get a little bit of money back. You'd pay it up front and then you'd get it back when you take them to the store, which I thought was a good solution.
Yes.
Maybe we need to go back to that.
Yes.
But glass is dangerous too. As a mom, I prefer to have plastic so that there's broken glass on the kitchen floor. So it's a conundrum.
It is a conundrum, but there has to be a way forward, doesn't there? And let's hope this really is taken seriously by the United Nations Treaty. I suspect with everything that's going on in the world, it may not have the priority on government agendas that it really deserves, but we can at least hope that will not be the case and set an intention in this direction. So, given this need for what will be a major multinational commitment, we suggest holding as our main focused intention this week, we will that all signatory nations to the United Nations Treaty on Plastic Pollution will be moved to honor their commitments to reduce plastic pollution in line with the treaty's recommendations. Please join us in holding this.
Absolutely. And before this convening in November, maybe we can even remember this intention and come to it, revisit it before they meet.
Yes, and there's going to be a lot of new governments on there in place. And maybe some of them will really take up the challenge.
Yes. Hopefully, if the research we're talking about starts making the connection with the health of humans and animals, and we start realizing some of these issues that we're dealing with medically are connected with the plastics, then I think the awareness will grow even more.
And there could be a lot of crossover with other priorities, meeting COP targets and, as you say, healthcare and other areas as well. So maybe it's not going to be such an isolated issue. As we know, if we hold intention, if we're sincere in holding intention, we will make an impact.
Yes. That about wraps it up for this episode. Remember, you can connect with us in the Facebook group and for live intention holding in Clive's daily insight timer offerings, and with me in the Labyrinth Activist Network's Zoom calls. Details of how to hook up with these are in our show notes. Look out too for our next special topic episode, which we'll be releasing in the next few days. Thank you for listening and for sharing with us in holding intentions. We look forward to connecting again next time. And in the meantime,
thank you. Go well. Stay safe.
And remember, we are more powerful together.
Impact is presented by Ellen Bintz and Clive Johnson and produced by Impact Productions. Our theme music is by Chris Collins and our logo artwork is by Auto Classic. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or your favorite podcast provider. We're a non-commercial podcast dedicated to people of any faith tradition or none who yearn for healing in our troubled world. Please pass on the word so others may join us in making an impact. Thank you for listening.